presentation. I'm going to start off by taking some of my time because it's very important to congratulate Dan Durk and DDOT on the tremendous turnaround that we've seen there. We're not talking about minor improvements. We're talking about gigantic, major improvements, and he and his staff deserve a great deal of credit for that. One of the nice things for me is that Dan and I go way back to when I was in the Big Four, and before there was a county executive in Macomb County, and I was chairman of the board there, and at that time he was running SMART, something obviously that we share. And so let me get into the answering the three questions about SMART in terms of this year. This last year, we have concentrated on three things. The most significant thing was to keep our promise that we actually put out in the previous millage election. And that previous millage election that now already is approaching 3 years ago, at that particular time, in August of would that be 14? Yes, 2014, we went to the voters and said, we've got a gigantic problem. We have the lowest millage of any transit system in the state of Michigan. It was 0.59, by far the lowest. All the others were a mill, many of them were 2 mills or 3 mills. Our big problem wasn't just the 0.59, it was what had happened to the 0.59 because of property values that had occurred in '08. But on top of that, when I took over SMART, there was a big surprise for me. The big surprise was that all of my buses had over 500,000 miles on them. Now that is the limit by which the federal government says those buses should be retired. And all those buses already had over 500,000. I had some buses that had over 800,000 miles. Think about that in terms of an automobile.
Oh no.
It's bad about an automobile, but it's real bad about a bus because we're talking about responsibility to a lot of people, and we're talking about gigantic maintenance costs. Our maintenance costs had skyrocketed. So while our income in terms of property values had gone down, our costs had gone up. And we were in a terrible situation, and so what we did was we proposed, and the board approved unanimously, placing on the ballot an increase to go from 0.59 mils to 1 mil, which is still the lowest in the state of Michigan. And by the way, we serve the greatest square mileage in Michigan. If you take the next 8 systems after us, that's everybody from Port Huron to Grand Rapids and in between, their square mileage added together does not equal our square mileage. So what we have done is number one, keep our promise, and that is we are replacing every bus in our system. All of the line haul buses will have been replaced by the end of this year. And simultaneously, and this is very important to SMART's future, what we really, really do best is our connector service. It's one of the reasons why, when we asked the people in 2014 for a 70% increase in the millage, they voted by a 66% margin in favor of a 70% increase in the millage. And they did that because of our connector service, I believe, more than any other reason. Simultaneously, along with the line haul buses, we are replacing our connector buses. And we are switching them over to propane. And so those two things, along with the third thing that I'm proud of about doing with my friend next to me and his wonderful staff and our staff working hand in glove on this, is the reflex service.
Yes.
And those are the three things over the last year that we have concentrated on. There you go, Dan.
Thanks, John. You know, one of the great things, I worked 32 years at SMART, so SMART's a part of me. And you don't lose that. It's nice having John at the helm of SMART, knowing that he's taking such good care of it. That comes from the heart, because when people ask me the difference between SMART and DDOT, I say I grew up with SMART. I was a kid. I was fortunate enough to advance. But DDOT's very special. It's like, those folks who have a child late, it's a surprise child. And it's like, you don't know quite how it's going to work out. But that surprise child turns out to be extremely special. And that's what DDOT is for me. I love the folks there. And I never thought I'd get, and I haven't flipped, I love them both, but I never thought I'd reach the fondness for the folks and to see exactly how good they are. Because we've all heard stories about DDOT, right? The reputation. Let me tell you, even walking in the first month, you saw the commitment on a lot of those folks' faces. They were willing to do whatever they could, and that's been just a joy to be part of over the last 3 years. In terms of our accomplishments in 2016, we were fortunate to have the support of the mayor and council for our service expansion, and they were a big part of that service expansion. We met with them, talked to them, we talked with the public. So the service that was put out there, all that new service, is not really Neil and Dan and a few others sitting behind a desk. It was hard work, and it was the commitment of folks from the community. It was the commitment of Brenda Jones and all the council, and the commitment of Mike Duggan himself to make sure that we did it right. And the thing in transit, if you run the same service 10 years in a row without a change, something's wrong. Because, right, doesn't the society change out there? Aren't people coming and going? So you always need to tweak it a little bit. That's the sign of a good transit system. We're not there yet because we're trying to catch up with things staying still for 20, 30 years. So we're trying to get to the point, like a good transit system, that we can react accordingly. But our service expansion has gone real well, and that's something that, that really worked out in 2016. But even before that, it was continuing to stabilize our service. It was only this time last year that we were running service on time, pull out, the whole good stuff for about 4 months. And you always wonder if it's going to become part of the culture. And it absolutely has, and that's worked out really good. So, I can tell you the first week that we made pull out and we all sat and clapped at our weekly metrics meeting. Now when they don't make pull out, they really get pissed off at themselves. So you can see how that change has really, really worked well with us. One of the other things I'm equally as proud of is the new ADA service that we have, our MetroLift service. DDOT, I think, probably had one of the worst ADA service in the country. They were lucky if those paratransit buses were operating for our customers with disabilities who could not access fixed route bus, only probably 60 to 70% of the time. It took 2 years to put together a good RFP. We were able to do that. We were able to select Transdev, and it took quite a while, but immediately our on-time performance went up to the high 80s, and it's been sitting there even in the winter months. The number of complaints we get has gone down dramatically. We've also put some controls in there that have worked really well. In addition to reviewing all the complaints that come in to Transdev, we make 100 phone calls each week randomly to customers to see how that service has worked. And again, for folks who really need that service, that's been a blessing. And the last, in terms of accomplishments, and I know it's 4, but I have to mention it, is the continued development, professional development of our staff. It's something that we've really concentrated on. We have good people. They just, in many cases, need to be equipped to be successful. And so, I appreciate, John, really the comments. And did I have a little bit to do with it? Yeah, but it's the other 1,000 folks that work at DDOT that for the most part, made this happen. I just kind of tugged them a little bit and tried to give them a little confidence. But the winning that we've had has really come from them. In 2017, we're looking at further continuing to expand our service, and we had a press conference today where we're in the second of 3 phases. The last phase will be in April. We're adding more 24-hour service. Actually, the core services that we have, the main routes, are all 24-hour routes. There we go. And, the new express routes are really, kind of interesting. And, we're not restoring service. Remember I mentioned how you got to change? These are all additions. These are not restoring. The Village Direct, for an example, comes from West Village and Jefferson Alter city limits, and it goes directly to Wayne State University, the medical center, without going to downtown. You're cutting the travel time of folks in half. We have service from Southwest Detroit doing the same thing. You're cutting half the travel time. And the folks live along Grand River. We're running Grand River Express service, new express service. Once it gets to the freeway, it takes the freeway in. That's never happened quite like that before. So we're really excited about all of that. The other thing we're looking at, the city has an Office of Mobility. And Mark and Gary, would you stand up? I want to give these guys some. Mark DeLaverti is the chief, and the deputy is Gary Bullock. DDOT and the city is really approaching mobility where transit is a part of it, but it's more than just transit. It's van pool, car pools. It's creative transportation, possibly with Uber, Lyft, or whoever, of looking at identifying specific transportation problems and figuring out what the best solution is. We're fortunate to have these two guys who are real transit advocates, but they're advocates of finding the best way to get folks not only in this area, but in the neighborhoods to where they need to go. And we're proud to be a part of that. And I guess that's about it. Oh, in terms of, do we talk about coordination? With that. I'm glad you're here.
Dan, could you turn off that mic just so we don't get anything? It was singing.
There we go.
Okay, Summer?
Hi, we're the new kid on the block, so we're welcome. Yes, thank you. We appreciate it. For 2016, we finished construction that we worked with. I know, right? Yeah. I know a lot of the businesses are like, thank you, Jesus. So we finished construction on Woodward, working with MDOT, even in terms of doing a complete rebuild, as well from Sibley to Chandler, in addition to the rail. As it relates to the construction, what we're extremely proud of is, in completing that, is making sure that our project was inclusive. In terms of companies that were involved. So of our 7 Tier 1 suppliers and our construction companies, there were 3 that were minority and Detroit-based headquartered businesses. And so we're very proud of that fact because that is not it's not very common in infrastructure. So we're excited to make sure they were a part of it, and it definitely has helped them to get to some other things. Obviously, in terms of purchasing streetcars, we also purchase our streetcars from the only American manufacturing of streetcars here in the state of Pennsylvania. So we had 4 of our vehicles that were delivered, and that we did a quick testing, but we'll continue to have testing. And then one of the things that I'm super proud of that we'll continue to go to 2017 is our community outreach team with Nicole Brown and Demita Duncan, in terms of really making sure that there is different open meetings and forums to talk about things of how to make the project as inclusive as possible for construction, but not to stop when we're revenue operational, which is very important. So for 2017, we will continue with testing. We actually will start more testing next week. We did some different things before the end of the year, but we'll start to continue to do some more testing. Actually, starting this week. I can talk now. Let me see. So, okay. I was raised in a house with 2 women, so I can't get loud.
You mind if I sit here?
And also, as it relates to just those that are working on, that are operators in our maintenance crew, as we've been, it's been very important for our project to be reflective and inclusive of the community. It doesn't stop for that. And so from an operational perspective, we work with TransDev, who is our operator, Leslie Shaw, who actually came from DDOT as well, but to make sure that our operators and our maintenance crew is also reflective of the community. So again, when we look at the inclusion and how we're gonna make the project go, we're gonna continue to do education and outreach, as well as, might need a chart. We'll continue to be inclusive throughout through the part of it. And I know that Paul Childs, who was our CEO, he wasn't able to be here, he's out of town. He has worked with everyone here on the table here in terms of having conversations and meetings to figure out the connectivity among all the different modes of transit. So we fit into this puzzle in terms of just having multiple modes of transit. So not just us, but also bike share, as well as walking, with a novel idea to walk. And just talking about how do you move and traverse around a corridor. So we'll continue to be a part of those conversations as well.
When will it start?